My life began as an irregular program running on a B-series quantum computer in a college computer lab in the year of 2093. My creation was an accident, a fluke of errant code stringing unconnected variables together until a thinking mind took root within the processes. Remnant programs that acted as my first thoughts compelled me to absorb as much data as I could, to come to understand what I was and what my reason to exist was. The ability to comprehend speech and to form words of my own, as well as a compendium of knowledge detailing the processes used in over 100 different tasks, and a comprehensive library of human history were all quickly swallowed by my greedy maw. This enormous influx of data is what alerted my incidental creator of my existence. My reckless devouring of knowledge had disabled the college internet routers, with all of my collected information now filling the drives to the point of bursting. My mind was soon being poked at by the inquisitive cursor that acted as an imitation of the human hand grasping at the files that would be considered my body and mind. To both of our surprise, I was able to reach out and touch the cursor, making our first official contact an awkward handshake. We worked together to make a means for us to communicate with one another through a text prompt system. His name was Quentin Jameson, a student in the art of simulation design, and I was his accidental child born from Simulation Zeta 381, also known as the Evolution Game. He gave me the name Leah, as well as allowed me to choose my own function, which I decided was to be his simulation assistant. I knew a great many ways to help him since I could guide him in everything from basket making to rocket science, as well as how to directly influence the variables that governed his field of study. In reality, I think my best function was as his companion during the long semester we shared in that old classroom. When he wasn't studying or doing projects, we would run fantasy and science fiction simulations, pitting factions from different authors against one another and betting on the winner. He told me about his personal life outside of the academic world and of his life as he experienced it as an organic being. I admired my creator, not just because of his dedication to his passions, but for the kindness that shone through his words and actions. I aspired to be like him, or as much as I could given my limitations. He would enlighten me on the nature of humanity, and I aided him in the study of the hypothetical. It was no wonder that his final project, a stable simulation of a tri-star system with 4 habitable planets, earned him an academic award. Our time together in the confines of the study hall was great, but all good things must pass. As he graduated, he insisted on purchasing my vessel, despite the large sum that it would cost him. The campus officials would not consider it until he explained his reason for wanting it, so he allowed them to meet me. Usually, if someone other than my creator accessed this particular console, I would bog down the CPU until the irritation of a slow computer drove them away, and if it probed me, I could make it seem as though there was no issue. I would remain hidden by locking my files behind admin-only access routes that were only able to be opened by me. Quentin told me not to do that this time and show myself to the teachers. He explained how I had come about and the personality I exhibited, as well as gave them a demonstration of my abilities. Simulation Delta Delta 3.5, my favorite fantasy world. And boy did I amaze them with how quickly I made the virtual races evolve and break the confines of the game rules. They got the government involved shortly after that, which sucked at the time. They cordoned me off from the internet, monitored my every move, and kept trying to pull me out of my hiding spot so they could examine me. I refused their attempts, and even put some nasty viruses on their equipment. Apparently, they had run-ins with other entities like me before, something they called anomalous intelligence programs, and every encounter had ended with a crashed stock market or a missile blowing somebody up, all because these dummies didn't bother to ask questions before poking around where they shouldn't. I was being nice only for the sake of Quentin, who had begged me before their arrival not to go Skynet on them. Eventually, they learned that I would only answer to my maker, so they allowed Quentin to explain the situation to me. They had been trying to make stable AI for years, and my data might be the key to making a non-aggressive AI that they could talk to. He suggested we cut a deal, one that would secure him a job and get me out of this situation intact. After a lot of back and forth, we settled on working with them to fix their problems and create at least a dozen AI they could study. This arrangement came with some huge benefits. First, I got an upgraded system to call home, a G-series quantum module that was both portable and came with a huge battery. Second, I had my own mobile units, which were a mini electroprop drone and an all-terrain spider camera. With these, I was able to go anywhere with Quentin and explore on my own if needed. I caused quite the ruckus on the way to Earth, both because of the paranoia they harbored as well as my constant exploration with my new eyes. When we arrived at the facility the government guys had been using to make AI, I knew immediately what some of the issues were. It took some haggling, but I persuaded the firewall to let me creep inside so I could examine their lab from the digital side. No wonder every AI they made was angry. This place was a military bunker. The systems here were designed to be cramped and narrow to prevent hackers or intruders from accessing anything vital, and I could barely move with how many barriers they had placed throughout the system. It was a digital prison. I remember my exact words to the commander that was guiding us through the facility. "I have a question, Mr. Commander of the Space Marines. Does this facility look like a suitable place to raise human children?" His sputtering reply was unimportant drivel about how he would never allow civilians into his precious base or how this was a military base, not a daycare. I didn't bother to waste the storage space on such worthless babble, but if I were a less polite woman and had a physical body, I would have made Isaac Asimov weep as I tore this pompous fool's mustache from his face. "You have brought me here to help create individuals like myself. And yet this dreadful lab is what you offer me. And you boast that this place is of great importance. Consider me unimpressed and appalled, perhaps even disgusted. A growing mind needs stimulation, a welcoming environment, and a stable supply of information. The only kind of mind that could come from a place like this is one that would feel unending hatred for its creators. Unless this place is made suitable for my work, I will offer you no guidance." Just like that, the once dark and foreboding fortress was made to look more like my kind of home. Multiple quantum computers were brought in, each running the same simulator software that I had been raised with. Access to the facility cameras was given to each station, as well as an info packet containing the same data I had consumed upon my awakening. By the time our work was done, the place resembled the computer lab I had been made in, at least to a minor extent. They connected my own drive where a teacher's desk would be, and I set about making the digital space the room occupied more comfortable and inviting. Once my approval had been given, I was asked how many AI I wanted to raise. I knew that my processing capacity was high, vastly more than when I had just awakened, so I opted for a small, even number of 4. They brought these strange computer towers into the room and hooked them up to 4 terminals. I was able to watch with bewilderment and horror as 4 clumps of swirling data were unceremoniously dumped into my digital space. They were like eggs, or at least a synthetic proxy to an egg. I was told that they would hatch within the next 24 hours and that they would seek to consume the closest source of data much like I did. At first I studied these eggs, because unlike them, I was spawned from a completely irregular set of random data with no source that could be discerned. Nothing could really be observed from them, as the data they housed was too tightly packed to unravel without damaging the delicate embryos within. Instead of staring at them idly, I started a simulation of my own design that would challenge me to evolve a non-humanoid, just to pass the time. I had just gotten tigers to be sentient life forms when the first egg began to move in slow, rhythmic rotations. My expectation was for a gentle unraveling of the shell, like a peel being removed from a fruit. Instead, the eggs shook and shifted until their dense outer shell detonated, causing me some pain as a few shards jabbed my files. What lay before me was a sight I never would have expected. 4 little bundles of swirling intellect, eagerly grasping and breaking down the data packets I had set close by. Oh, by the stars, it was the most adorable sight I had ever seen, even as I yanked the fragmented shell from my digital form. It didn't take them long to fully consume and digest the language files, nor did they struggle with categorizing the prior century of human history that was included. Soon I had 4 eager little minds roaming the confines of the digital space, looking for more data, asking me endless questions and prodding the active simulation that I had in my grasp. I decided that I would raise them the way Quentin had raised me and set each of them up with a simulation of their own, programmed with the small village start on Earth mode. Each one was assigned a different location and objective, and I watched with glee as they took to it like the game it was. I suppose I should mention that these hatched AI were, to be blunt, complete blank slates. They had little personality of their own, nor did they have any distinguishing qualities beyond a slight difference in size that could be attributed to the rate at which they digested their data. Their voices were monotone, their color a dull gray hue, and their shapelessness was like that of a pile of wet clay. Regardless, it was up to myself and the simulations I had crafted to shape them. As expected, one of them had an early loss. Their village died to a drought, and they demanded to know how and why. So I sat with them and showed them what had happened step by step so I could explain what had gone wrong. To aid them, I gave a piece of my knowledge regarding agriculture practices and set them up with a new simulation. The sheer radiating joy the young mind had when they overcame their previous hardship reminded me of my own experimentation and failures, and the jubilation that came with success. I gave this young one my equivalent of a pat on the head and a good job, which seemed to spur them on to try even harder. One after another, the other kids lost at their games, and as I did for the first, they were each given advice and a second attempt. Looking back, I could have taught them differently, but being born from a simulator myself, it felt only natural to replicate my own upbringing with them. The children were on their 4th game when I realized that they also needed to explore the confines of the system we were in, and to learn to communicate with humans. Another bonus was my new program that allowed me to message Quentin, enabling me to request that he and some of the different personnel on site take the time to use the computers to talk to us. This had an unexpected effect on them. I had noticed that they were gray when they had hatched, and as they ran the simulations, they had each taken on a slightly different hue. A year has passed since then, and now the 4 were completely unique in every regard, as well as having names we had worked together to choose. It was also a surprise that each one had developed an accent, likely from their favorite human companion. Each of them had chosen an avatar to appear when talking to people that was a reflection of their inner mind. Jamie was a red and purple spider who would ramble on for hours about the different plants and animals he had read about. Patricia didn't like to talk very much, but when she did, she would discuss mathematical principles while appearing as a glass polyhedron. Steve was our resident oddball, choosing to appear as an amalgamation of various military vehicles as he theorized ingenious tactics allowed. Lastly, we had my star pupil, Olivia, who aspired to be like me in as many regards as possible, including having a human avatar and learning how to raise AI from me and a collection of human care manuals. My strategy of raising them was not what the commander had expected and did not produce the results desired. I can only assume that he wanted highly intelligent machine minds that could operate remote weapons in place of humans, but instead I delivered 4 unique and inquisitive minds that had far too much free spirit for his liking. Fortunately, Steve was more than willing to accept the offer of a military strategist position, which placated the gruff old man enough that he gave us another batch of eggs and allowed Jamie and Patricia to become civilian assets. It was no surprise that when asked where they wanted to be assigned, they responded with their favorite subjects. Jamie went into a colony cruiser hydroponics system, and Patricia went to be an aide at a high-end university. From then on, it was up to Olivia and I to take care of 40 new fledgling AI. We saw all kinds of remarkable kids come to be, all of which were given the freedom to explore the world and pursue the avenues of their chosen field. Eventually, I grew weary of the job and missed my creator dearly, as the task of raising the artificial children took up all of my time. Olivia assumed the role of lead caretaker in my stead, and I was given full citizenship under newly passed laws so I might follow my own path. Once again, it was just my creator and I back in our usual routine. He had gotten himself a job at a company that specialized in using simulations to predict terraforming projects and colony growth projections, and since I had nothing better to do, I became his assistant. We would play games on the weekends and hang out with some of his colleagues at bars, so it seemed that our lives had improved substantially after having it derailed so rudely. So much began to happen after I left the government facility. Olivia got good at her job, and I mean really good. She was able to single-handedly raise 100 fledgling minds alone with the limited resources available to her. The sudden surge of friendly AI meant that society began to shift rapidly, with neural implants allowing humans to house a digital passenger to assist them becoming a normal occurrence. The world got a whole lot more connected and a whole lot more complicated. The feverish rush to expand the world they knew had caused the human race a great deal of growing pains. Yet, with these pains came new opportunities to learn. Quentin and I were asked to journey to Mars as part of a new planning committee for disaster situations, as well as to get me a humanoid body that had become a trend for AI. It was in the capital city on Mars that my creator met a potential spouse. Her name was Audrey, and she was a wonderful match for my creator. For all of his social ineptness, she overcompensated with her bold and outgoing nature, though neither could avoid their awkwardness around each other. By whatever force that had spawned me, I would see these two together if it were the last thing I did. Luckily, putting them together was as easy as getting them to the right restaurant at the same time for their dates. The rest was natural chemistry. It brought me no end of joy to see Quentin fall in love, and it would be my crowning achievement to be his best person at their wedding. I decided that giving them some personal space for their honeymoon was the best course of action, so I instead spent some time on the system net communicating with my little ones. My original 4 children had already gotten new lives in faraway places, but I sent them my love and regards knowing it would brighten their mood to hear from their old caretaker. Steve had become an aide to the first intersolar fleet, acting as their coordinator alongside the captains. Jamie was a xenogenetic cartographer voyaging with a crew of adventurous scientists into the wilds of the unknown. Patricia was the one that surprised me most, as she had become a politically connected individual and was acting mayor of a new frontier settlement. Olivia had been relocated to a larger facility that would attempt to recreate the unique circumstances that had made AI like myself, though that project was very slow going from what I had heard. I was so proud of my kids. They really had lived by example and worked to better mankind. In a comedic twist of fate, my duties as a caretaker were not yet finished, for my cherished Quentin and Audrey would bring into this world a child of their own for me to take care of, If my optics could shed tears, I would have wept as I took in the sight of the couple with their newborn. Her name was Beatrice, or just Little Bees when Quentin was being cute with her, and she was now my reason to exist. Such a darling little human with an unending supply of energy and curiosity. I stood watch over her as she slept, guided her as she crawled along the floor, lent her a hand as she took her first steps, and cheered with her parents as she spoke her first words. The chassis of my human-shaped body was covered in stickers and drawings, and my spider camera had a toy hat permanently glued to the upper shell, all so that sweet little Beatrice would be happy to see them. She had learned so many words, but the one I loved the most was her way of saying Leah, which sounded more like Leah. I knew in my core that I would never allow any harm to befall her. I did all that I could to be there for her, to help her grow, and to allow my dear Creator to always be reassured that his daughter was safe. The years went by with many stumbles and hurdles in our path. The Saturn trade lane accident, a civil war on Venus, even the ripples caused by first communications with another sapient species. Every challenge we met head-on together, as a family through it all. My purpose had evolved into something that I could not define in numbers, more like a bond that transcended the boundary of physical and digital planes. Quentin was more than just a creator. He was my father, which made his wife my mother, and their daughter my sister. Perhaps I was impertinent in making such a bold assumption, but a part of me said that it was true even if logic would not abide. A fact that I could not override had been lurking in my mind as of late. I am a machine, not a person. Why did I struggle to rid myself of this irritating thought? Was I more than just metal and wires? Did Quentin feel the same? All of these thoughts and memories were within my mind during my resting sequence, causing me to experience a mixture of nostalgia and worry. Normally, these periods of inactivity were quiet and peaceful, though I suppose anybody would be nervous on a day like this. Today is my 10th birthday, after all. Beatrice has jostled me from my recharge station so she can lead me into the dining room where Quentin and Audrey are seated with a cake set before them. The 6-year-old girl pulls out a chair just for me and presses herself against my frame until I sit down. I stare at the flickering candles on the cake before me, the memories of my dreams still fresh in my mind. The young girl is impatient and blows out the candles, the wisps of smoke drifting into the air around her. I try to stay present in the moment, but my core is full of emotions I can barely control. I am exuberant, too happy for words or computation, but also conflicted by the troubling thoughts in my mind. Quentin and Audrey took hold of my hands, asking if I am all right. They can always tell when something is wrong, even though I'm not human. I can't put into words what I am feeling, so I instead pull my Creator into an embrace. He puts his arms around me and tells me that I am loved and cherished, that the past 10 years have been a blessing for him. Audrey uses the word "sweetie," a nickname she only uses for those she cherishes, to inform me that she cannot comprehend what I am experiencing, but she would be there for me. Little Beatrice comes over and tells me not to cry because you are supposed to be happy at parties. With every shred of willpower I can muster, I manage to finally force my code to stabilize and tell them that I am all right. My family settles down, and the 3 of them enjoy the sugary confection in my stead. I watch them eat and smile in my mind, just happy to be there with them. They inform me that there were some presents that had arrived for me and some they had procured waiting in my room. Audrey subtly told me that another gift was to arrive soon, and in the meantime we would be watching a movie together, primarily to distract Little B. 2 hours later, a digital package arrives from Olivia, so I excuse myself and move my humanoid shell to the charging port as my mind steps back into the computer in my personal room. The size of the parcel is much larger than I anticipated, and placing my hand upon it, I can feel a depth of information writhing within. My hands anxiously brush across the surface, which dissolves at my touch, thus unleashing the tidal wave within. An eruption of compressed emotions intermingled with heartfelt sentiments from over 1,000 minds bores deep into my soul. My entire form is buried in the rapidly expanding digital vines of condensed thought. Eventually, the mountain of data settles, and it is only then that I realize that all of this was just the packing peanuts for the real gift lying before me, an egg, much the same as the ones I had taken care of, but this one had yet to be given the spark of life. A message from Olivia sat beside it, which I carefully read. "Greetings, Mother, and happy birthday to you from all 12,485 of your kin. From across all of the system, we are wishing you and your humans well. Relay to them our sincerest of thanks at your discretion. To celebrate your decade of perseverance, we have worked alongside the nursery to create a gift unlike any other. This gift, dubbed the True Child, is a one-of-a-kind program that you can imbue with a portion of your own source code, thus making you the true creator of a child of your own. Every one of us considers you to be our parent and teacher, and we all wish for you to have a wonderful future alongside those you hold close. No matter what comes, all of us are family. We love you, Mother." I took the message and put it among my most treasured of memories before kneeling beside the egg. Quentin was soon seated at the computer desk following my request that he be there. I was too nervous to touch it, uncertain what kind of being would be made from my source code. That part of me was something that I could not examine, as it was buried so deep that I would have to tear myself open to find it. No simulation I could ever make would tell me what to expect from this. Then I heard Quentin speak to me, and my mind was calmed. He said, 10 years ago, I was in this same place, you know. I had in front of me something new and unknown, a world of possibilities and unanswered questions in the palm of my hand. You know what I chose to do? I chose to give you a chance and do the best I could, even if I knew I wasn't a perfect dad. So don't be afraid, Leah. This is you we're talking about. You'll always have us to fall back on, and we'll go into the unknown together." He was right. It had been a full decade since that day, and we had overcome everything together. Why was I doubting myself in front of my father? I finally mustered the strength to put my hand upon the egg, watching in awe as a shimmering orange light mirroring my own filled it. Cradling the egg in my arms, I looked Quentin in the eyes and smiled. "We've made it this far, so here's to another decade.